we're going to look at how to add some basic UI elements to our Unity game. In this case, I'm starting with an empty scene, and we're just going to add a couple basic things to show how you can start hooking up some buttons and text to react to the user's input. So the first thing to do is to add some stuff to the scene. So if you go to Game Object UI, you get a bunch of different options. Now in this case, we're going to add two things. We're going to add a piece of text. And as you can see, we got more than just a piece of text. We actually got what's called a canvas, which is essentially the parent object that's going to hold our UI. And we got an event system. And these things are just kind of required for UI elements in Unity. So let's go back to the UI menu and add in another thing. We're going to add a button. Okay, so now those two things are in our scene. Now, as you can see, I'm in game view. That's going to show kind of how the UI displays in the game for real, versus if you're looking at the scene view, it's going to be sort of an awkward looking 3D object kind of floating in your game. It's probably more useful to be looking at it in this view for now. While we have these two objects, let's start to customize their appearance and their position on the screen. Let's keep the button in the middle because it's going to be our primary interaction in this example, but let's make it a bit bigger. So looking at the components, we see a few different things in the button. It has an image script and a button script, and these are ways that you can alter the appearance of the button. As you can see, it has different categories: normal, highlighted, pressed, and disabled. These are different states for the button, and you can change the color for those events, or you can go and change the type of transition. You can even swap out whole entire images or do animations, so it's very, very customizable. Let's just make it bigger just to show off how to do that. So this button contains both its sort of rectangle and the text that it contains. So if we go back up, we can change the width and the height of our button. Let's say like 300 and like 100, nice and big. And then we can do the same thing with our text. Text in Unity is very editable, just like in many other types of programs. So we can go in and change the font size to be nice and big. Maybe we'll make it bold. And of course, we can change the text that it displays. So press 4 points. That's what we're going to do. Okay. Now this button is staying in the center, so we can leave it where it is. But if we go to our other piece of text, we're going to want that to be somewhere else. Unity UI elements can work on kind of an anchoring system. So in this case, we're going to anchor the text to the top left, and it will appear in the top left no matter what size screen or device we're using. So if I click here, it's going to bring my different anchor presets. And here's the top left one for this. And if I hold down Shift and Alt, it's also going to pop my text automatically in that corner. As you can see, it's very, very close to the edge. If I wanted to make that not so close to the edge, I could go in and just add a couple changes to here. So 10 and minus 10 for X and Y. See, they push it to the side. I'll do a little more, actually. Cool. And I'm going to customize this text a little bit as well. Let's make this bigger. And maybe we'll change the color to white so it stands out. Okay, and we'll also, since this will be a score, we will start it off at where it will start off. So here's what our UI looks like when we've finished customizing it. Now let's actually add the functionality. First thing to do is add a script. I have prepared a UI example script here, but normally to add a new script, you go to Add Component and make a new script like so. But in this case, I'm just going to take the script and drag it right on over and add it to our button. Okay, let's look at the code. Okay, so here's our code. I'll take you on a quick tour. So I have an integer that's tracking the points value starting at 0. And I have a public text object called pointText. And to be able to use the text object, I'm making sure I'm using unityengine.ui at the top. So this is tracking our reference to our text object, and we're going to have to hook that up manually in the Unity editor in just a moment. At the very start of the program, I'm calling this update text function, which we've written, and it's down here at the bottom. Basically, it's just taking the text of our text object and updating it. It's adding the word points and a colon and a space in a string, and then tacking on to the end of that the value of our points. Because the points is an integer, it's a number being tracked, we have to use the toString method to turn it into a string text. In addition to that, we have the function that will be called whenever we press our button. We're calling it add point. It's also a public function, and it returns nothing. It could have a parameter, but in this case we don't need to. And in that function we are increasing the points by 1, and then we're calling update text. So that means that every time we click the button, points goes up, and then we update the text to match the points value, which happens right here. Okay, so let's go back to Unity and make sure we hook up all of the elements so that they work together. The first thing to do is in our button, we have to make sure that it is calling the function when it is clicked. So it has this useful onClick window right here. If we just press plus, we get to assign an object, and then within that object, which function to use. So it's going to be referencing itself. So I'm just going to take the button from the hierarchy, drag it into this object, and then from the list here, I'm going to find the function. Now, these are all the different types of things that it contains, but we want the script that we wrote, UI example, and inside of that, we want to find add point, which is the one that we added. So I'll click on that. So now the add point function will be called whenever the button is pressed. The last thing we need to do is, in our UI example, we need to set our reference to our point text. So once again, we can just easily take that text, drag it on over, and update it there. So now if I press play, I should be able to click the button and see that points indeed goes up every single time I click it. Not exactly a fun game, but a demonstration of how you can start hooking different things up in the UI in Unity.